Always water your trees as needed and not out of habit.
Yeah, so I'm Armand. I've been doing bonsai for about 4 years. And there's a few things that I've noticed where people has a misunderstanding of bonsai, and that's what I want to discuss today. Uncle Bruce, just a photo of a few nice bonsais that I think one day we'll reach that stage. Okay. So bonsai and the stigma behind it. There are a few things, like I said, that most people don't really understand or grasp of bonsai. First thing is, bonsai is very expensive. And though this can be true, you don't necessarily have to start with a specimen, very expensive tree. You can start with nursery material and so forth and so forth. Second thing is, bonsai is grown indoors. That's unfortunately not true. Bonsai is grown outdoors. They need sunlight for photosynthesis and all the other nice things. Okay, then bonsai is exclusively grown in Akadama, or as we have Sakadama here in South Africa, which is also not true. If you're developing material from a start, you want to have it full of nutrients and so forth, and you want explosive growth. Sakadama needs to be spared for when you are entering a refinement stage in your trees. Okay. And you also need expensive and specialized tools. Though this is the case that you will eventually need those tools, it's my opinion that you need 2 tools to start off with. A sharp point scissors and your normal bypass pruners that you need. With those 2 things you can start off with. Okay. So yeah, the basic tools that we need for bonsai, obviously we need trees and shrubs. So there's a few characteristics that we look for when we are choosing our bonsai. We are looking for small leaves, firstly, good tapered trunk, a thick trunk, or a trunk with a lot of movement. Then when you're going out to nurseries and you're looking for material, be the weirdo that's growing there in the pots, looking for root spread, looking for nice trunks with movement, and so forth and so forth. Be that weirdo. You know, I'm that weirdo, and Shunkai is as well. Okay. So Uncle Bruce, next one. So, like I mentioned earlier, it's my opinion that you need 2 pruning shears to start off with. It's a sharp point shears there at the top, and then the bypass pruners are on the right hand here. You can also, most of us already have the bypass pruners and then also a bigger pruner already part of our normal gardening tools. The sharp point scissors you will use for finer twigs and branches and so forth, where the bypass pruners and the larger bypass pruners also you use for larger trunks and branches. Then you can also use a saw for chopping your trunks if you're growing a tree really tall, and then you chop it down and you start from there. All right. Okay, the next thing that you will need is pots and swirls. To start off with, you don't need to have the fancy Japanese pots that cost hundreds of dollars, rands. You can start, as you can see at the back there, you can start with a lot of plastic containers. You know, when the wind blows, they can fall, it won't break. The children might play, break them as well. So yeah, and then you need good compost with a few additives that for the tree to grow healthily. So yeah, the 4 basic components of soil that I think that you need is obviously your good compost, then stones for structure, river sand for drainage, and then perlite for oxygen. Not many people know this, but roots of a tree actually do need oxygen to grow. All right. Okay, watering. Watering is probably one of the most difficult things in bonsai to master. The Japanese people, they will tell you, listen, before you touch a tree or you work on a tree, master your watering. Figure out how to water. Now there is a few ways that you can water. Most of us have a hose pipe that we can use with a spray. Just don't put it on a jet function. So use it on the spray function so that you don't blast all of the soil out of your pots. If you don't have a hose pipe, I watered my trees for the first 2 years with a watering can. It takes a little bit more time, but you can really focus on how to water your trees. Now, the best way that we can water our trees or to check whether our trees need water, is to put your finger in the pot until about the first knuckle. If the soil clings to your knuckle or your finger, then you know, okay, it's still moist, the tree doesn't need water. If the soil is dry and it does not cling to the water, to your finger, then you know, okay, cool, the plant needs water and you need to give it some watering. So yeah, watering, very, very important. Then the last thing that you will need is wire. This is probably the most expensive thing that you will need as wire because it's imported from Japan. To start off with, you need basically three grades of wire. 1 millimeter for your fine twigs, 2.5 millimeter for your a little bit thicker branches, and then 5 millimeter if you want to wire a trunk or a thick branch. Okay. Okay, then fertilizer. Because bonsai is grown in a confined space, we need to add all the macro and micronutrients that the plant need to grow and be healthy. So most of the fertilizers, when you look on the packet, there's an NPK ratio. Usually it will be a 12 to a 5 to a 8 or whatever the case might be. I just say they're 10 to 10 to 10. So NPK stands for the nitrogen, N, and this is responsible for green stems and green leaves. Okay. Then P is for phosphorus. This contributes to healthy root growth and flowering and fruiting as well. And then you have potassium, which stimulates faster plant growth, and it also helps with disease resistance. Okay. So there's two basic types that we have of fertilizer. We have an organic fertilizer and we have an inorganic fertilizer or a synthetic fertilizer. We, as a bonsai community, we advocate for organic fertilizer because it already has all the micronutrients included in the fertilizer. Whereas the synthetic one is the very basic form of the chemical so that the plant can take it up very quickly. And this can lead to very extravagant growth, which is not necessarily what we need, what we want in bonsai. Okay. Okay. So we talked a little bit earlier on how to what characteristics we look for when we are selecting bonsai material. So how to select good starting material is, first of all, small leaves. You can't have a small little tree like this, but the leaves are bigger than the tree. It's out of proportion, and unfortunately, bonsai is all about balance. Okay. Second thing that we look for is a thick trunk or a trunk with a lot of movement. Now there is a few ways to get a thick trunk or get a trunk with a lot of movement. First thing is you can plant it in the ground and grow it thick, and then eventually get it out. Or you can ask your friends and family, listen, I want to come and dig up your trees. Give it to me, please. If you start a tree from a seed or a cutting, it's very easy to wire them and then give them a lot of movement. Then you can also keep them small, which is what we want in bonsai. Okay. Third thing that we need to look for is a good root spread or a nabari. So when buying material from a nursery, go in, like I said earlier, go into the pots, scratch around, look for good roots that you want on the surface. If you don't have good roots, there is a few techniques that you can use to, like root grafting, approach grafting, ground layer, and air layering, to improve your root spread on the barrier. But these techniques are a little bit more advanced. Okay, so I've chosen 4 trees that I think is ideal for starting bonsai. First is our spatboom, or Portulacaria afra. It's a succulent shrub with small leaves. Versatile, and it can be grown in any style that you want. It's very forgiving and can tolerate being not watered for a day or 2. So if you forget or you're away, then your plant will survive. It has to be protected during the winter, unfortunately, from frost. If it's not protected, it will die. We will have some dieback to it. I lost one of mine these years. Second tree is our witsteenkoot, or Saltus africana. It's a deciduous tree with a bright yellow color in the autumn and then a glossy green leaf in the summer. It does like full sun and does not need protection during the winter, so you can leave it outside and it will be fine. It does like to be attacked by pests, like the whitefly and aphids, so continuous treating with pesticides is a requirement on the Saltus africana. Okay. Then any of our indigenous figs, like our Ficus Burtt Davyi, the Ficus Burtt Davyi master is sitting over here, Mr. Jaco. It's very forgiving and can be trained in virtually any style. Produces roots very easily, especially aerial roots as well, which is what we look for when we are doing ficus. It likes full sun, but it does need protection during the winter, approaching 5 degrees Celsius or less. Otherwise, you're also going to lose your tree, there's going to be some dieback, and so forth and so forth. Then the last one is our juniper. The juniper is very versatile. It can also be grown in any style. It does have to have some green foliage left on when you do the training. Otherwise, that branch will just die, and eventually your tree will die as well. It can also tolerate not being watered for a day or 2. It does like the soil a little bit drier. So what I usually do is I water it thoroughly in the morning and then leave it to dry out during the day. And yeah, it also does not need protection during winter. In some cases, the foliage will actually go to a auburn brown. So then you have some color changes in the seasons as well. Okay. All right. There's a few tips that I learned the hard way. First is know your species and its growing habits and its watering habits. The first tree that I got was a juniper. I cut it back and I thought, wow, this is going to be a very good tree. To my surprise, 3 months later, it died. 3 mistakes that I made. Overwatering, not giving it enough sun, and not leaving enough foliage on after I pruned it. So knowing your species, its growing habits and its watering habits is very important. We can all go onto the internet. There's a lot of information regarding species there. So yeah. Second one is join a club and absorb as much information as possible. Talk to the senior leads, get their advice, and just enjoy your bonsai journey with them. Okay. Don't kill your tree with love. That's one thing that I think a lot of us mistake that we make. Usually, if you give it too much attention, too much water, too much sun, too much whatever, it will also die. Sometimes it's also better to leave it. You're not happy with the trunk thickness or whatever. Just leave it. Let it grow, and eventually you'll see, that's wild, and you cut it back and you start it again. Okay. Always water your trees as needed and not out of habit. Like I said earlier, press your finger into the soil, see if it's needing water. If it does not need water, leave it. Out of habit, you will get root rot, you will kill your tree eventually. Okay. Repot your tree every 2 to 3 years. It's necessary because they are grown in confined spaces. The roots twirl around and eventually it just becomes hard and it doesn't water anymore. Okay. And know when to fertilize with what NPK ratio, what time of the year. For instance, if you are in the growing season like we are now, you want to use a fertilizer with a high nitrogen content for robust growth. When you're entering the winter season, you want a more fertilizer with a higher phosphorus, so that you can, all the energy can go into the roots, and the roots can store that energy, and then when the spring comes, you can just let it grow again. Right. Ja. Fluit, Mr. Rick, is uit.